Hey everyone, it's Craig from Trail and Ultra Running. It's probably been a while since you've seen a product review from me. I've been busy with a lot of things and it's time to get back here and test some cool products. If you haven't seen a product review from us before, there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, we always do on-trail reviews, which means you're gonna get me out here in the mountains or in the desert. I'm probably gonna be breathing hard and I'm definitely gonna be sweaty. The second thing is everything that we test, we don't do one and done. So we're gonna have tons of hours, tons of miles on them. I generally like to put 100 miles on things before I even think about reviewing it. So with that, we're gonna jump right in. Today we're gonna talk about the Altra Lone Peak 8. And we're not just gonna talk about the product itself, we're gonna do a little bit of an anthology. I wanna share with you some of the history of the Lone Peak, how it's evolved over time, and even show you some of the previous models, comparing the newest version with some of the original ones. So with that, let's kind of keep moving up trail, see where we get to, and we'll check back in with a little bit of the history of the Altra Lone Peak. So my first introduction to the Altra Lone Peak was more than 10 years ago when one of the founders, Brian Beckstead, gave me and a couple of others a sneak peek to this new, innovative, zero-drop trail shoe that he had sitting in the back of his car. And he not only showed it to us, but he kind of gave us these grandiose plans that he was going to run the Wasatch 100 in this prototype shoe several months later. So we paid really close attention. I actually saw him at the race and he ran 100 miles in the shoe. And I had a pair on my feet the first day they were on the shelf at the retail shop. And I immediately threw them on my feet, went for a run on the trails, and was blown away. One of the things that I loved about the original Lone Peak was it was a beefy shoe. For a lot of people, it was heavy, but for me, it could bulldoze anything. It had good traction. It had the amazing toe box that Altra prides themselves on. And it had this really good tread structure that just seemed to be really grippy on loose and technical trails, which is what we have here in the Wasatch. So I immediately fell in love with the shoe. I probably put about 500 to 600 miles on it before I retired it, but they were just incredible. I've gone on to wear almost every model of the Altra Lone Peak since their inception. There were some I loved and some I wasn't such a fan of. So I'll tell you this about the original shoes, usually the first 2 to 3 models. Some of the big pros for me were what I've already stated. The cons were that they had a difficult time maintaining tread. They wore out pretty quick. And then a lot of people also complained about the quality of the upper. Now, this is just me. I don't want to speak for any other runners. I've never had an issue with blowing out any of my Lone Peaks or any pair of Ultras. Maybe it's just my running style, but I've never had a problem. I sympathize with those who have, and I know for certain that Ultras put a lot of focus and a lot of effort into improving the quality of their upper over time. My favorite pair of the early models was the 1.5, that red pair, the bright red ones. I still have a pair. I had 2 pair originally. I've kept one in pretty pristine condition, and I do pull them out of the closet every now and again and give them a little run because they're amazing. So let's move on up the mountain. We're almost to the top, at which point we'll talk about the Lone Peak 8 and how it compares with those original models. All right, so let's talk about the Lone Peak 8. So this is the newest model, comes in a whole bunch of different colorways. They sent me 2 of them. This is my favorite. I like this green and orange. It makes me feel like I'm in the Boy Scouts. So let's first talk about the pros and then we'll jump into a couple of the cons. So the pros are Always a great Altra. I love the stack height on this shoe. The tread is amazing. It's the same tread pattern they've maintained consistently throughout all the models with some slight modifications, but overall very similar. The heel cup is pretty similar, if not the same, to about the last 3 models, which I love. Like, it really holds the heel well, holds well in the midfoot. The design of the shoe, the way the laces wrap over the top of the foot, fantastic, really holds the midfoot and the heel in well. And it does continue to have the back Velcro and the front loop, which is actually part of the laces specifically for locking in your gaiters. So with that, let's talk about a couple of the things that I struggle with on this model. The first of which is an issue that Altra has maintained throughout every model of the Lone Peak. They struggle with sizing. You'll see as I share in this video that I have a pair of the Lone Peak 6 all-weather, the Lone Peak 7s, and the 8. And each of those 3 shoes, while all a size 11.5, size almost a half different between all 3 pairs. The 6 running small, 7 running perfect, and the 8 running almost a half size large. I have a full finger length in front of my toe, which is not something I particularly care for. The other negative I have is there seems to be this belief when making a shoe that the longer a shoe is, the wider the person's foot, which is not the case, especially with runners. Our feet tend to be the same whether you're a size 8, a 10, or a 12. There are exceptions to that. There are bigger runners, and that's great. They need a wider shoe. That doesn't necessarily mean that the length of the shoe should be proportionate to the width. So for me, the 8 is just sloppy. I'm not comfortable running technical downhill on it. I feel like my foot slides too much even when I cinch down the laces. And so for me, I kind of struggle with this shoe as a big mountain shoe. It's great on buffed out trails, phenomenal on dirt roads, but as a big mountain shoe, I don't think it necessarily lives up to its name as the Lone Peak, which is not a problem that they had with the earlier versions. They seem to run a little bit narrower. That said, you wear a thicker sock, you cinch down the laces, and it's still a great shoe. So overall, my opinion is, as we'll always maintain, this is actually my go-to shoe for any ultra 50 to 100 miles. I'm comfortable in it. I don't have to worry about blisters. They're great with Injinji socks. They let your feet expand. They're comfortable. There's just enough cushion. So overall, I give it a thumbs up with just a couple of little issues that have been consistent over time. With that, come back. We're going to be reviewing the Olympus next, and we should have some other good product reviews coming up in the next few weeks. Thanks.